Hello everyone, welcome to Earth Archives. Many people must have seen Pirates of the Caribbean. Apart from the protagonists, I wonder if you know that the town in the movie actually exists. That is Port Royal. Today I will talk about the story of this city. Please subscribe to the program before it starts. If possible, please share it with your friends. Port Royal, Jamaica, often described as the wickedest city on earth, evokes images of pirates with cutlasses raised high, the roar of cannon fire in the distance, and a town teeming with audacity, vice, and fortune. Its fame is not just that of a bustling colonial port, but also that of a lawless haven for marauding pirates and notorious privateers who looted, plundered, and revelled in their illicit riches. This small strip of land on the edge of the Caribbean Sea, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun, became the epicenter of an empire built on daring naval conquests and unimaginable wealth. A place where the line between villainy and heroism blurred, and every street seemed to echo with the sounds of raucous revelry and the crash of fortunes being made and lost. But as quickly as it rose, Port Royal's glory days came to an end in a tragic and almost surreal moment in history. On June 7, 1692, an earth-shattering earthquake rattled the city, shaking it to its very core. In the blink of an eye, 2/3 of the city sank beneath the sea, dragged into the depths of the harbour, leaving only the remnants of a once thriving metropolis. What had been a place of excess and debauchery was suddenly engulfed by disaster, swallowed whole by the earth, as if fate had come to collect its dues for all the sins and excesses that had defined the city. The destruction didn't end there. Fires broke out in the aftermath, followed by hurricanes that further devastated the town, ensuring that Port Royal would never again rise to the heights of its former splendour. What remained of the town was soon repurposed as a British naval station, and over time, the once vibrant city faded into the background, eventually becoming little more than a small fishing village, its former grandeur lost to the annals of time. Yet what makes Port Royal so unique, so historically significant, is its status as a catastrophic site, a place forever preserved by disaster. Unlike most archaeological sites, which unfold over centuries, showing the slow decay of buildings, the passage of time marked by layers of construction and ruin, Port Royal's fate was sealed in a matter of minutes. In the span of 37 short years, the city's pulse, its hustle, and its life were abruptly extinguished as the ground beneath it swallowed it whole, leaving behind a perfectly preserved snapshot of a vanished world. The streets, the buildings, the treasures, everything was frozen in time, just as it was when the earthquake struck, offering us a rare glimpse into a moment in history where the city's spirit was forever trapped beneath the waves. When the Spanish first arrived on the shores of Jamaica in the 1500s, they stumbled upon a natural harbour so perfectly situated, so ideally slanted, that it seemed tailor-made for cleaning and repairing ships, scrubbing their hulls free of barnacles. They named it Cayo de Carena, but in truth all they managed to build were a few simple wooden warehouses. The island, however, would soon find its destiny rewritten. In 1655, the British seized Jamaica from Spain, marking the beginning of an era that would see this small, modest location transform into one of the most strategically important spots in the Caribbean. The British, quick to recognize its military value, particularly its potential to safeguard the island from Spanish attempts to reclaim it, and from the ever-present threat of French invasion, immediately began fortifying the area. Within 2 years they completed Fort Cromwell, later renamed Charles Fort, and in the next 2 decades, construction continued as 6 well-equipped fortresses encircled the island. At the height of its military might, Port Royal boasted defences that surpassed those of any contemporary Spanish cities in the New World, including Cartagena, Havana, Veracruz, and Belo. Within these protective walls, the town flourished. Its strategic location, secure, sheltered, and positioned on flat land with deep water just off the coast, made it an ideal port for large ships to dock, unload cargo, and undergo repairs. But it wasn't just the ships that anchored here. Sailors, merchants, and traders all flocked to the burgeoning city, taking advantage of the commercial opportunities offered by this lively trading hub. Between 1655 and 1692, Port Royal's growth outpaced that of any other British settlement in the Americas. By 1662, the town's population numbered 740, but by 1692 it had swelled to somewhere between 6,500 and 10,000 people. The 51-acre site was densely packed with approximately 2,000 buildings, and the actual population was likely closer to 6,500 to 7,000, of which around 2,500 were slaves. Port Royal quickly became the economic center of the Caribbean, its wealth tied to the transatlantic slave trade and the export of sugar and raw materials. The city buzzed with merchants, craftsmen, traders, ship captains, slaves, and notorious pirates, all feeding into a sprawling commercial network. It boasted a governor's residence, the King's House, home to the Supreme Court, 4 churches, and a cathedral. Many of the buildings were constructed from brick, a clear sign of the town's considerable wealth that set it apart from other settlements in the region. The city's inventory revealed a society of extraordinary prosperity, and unlike other British colonies, Jamaica used minted coinage for transactions rather than bartering goods. In its early years, the approval of privateering was common in Port Royal. Privateers, essentially legalized pirates, received official commissions from the British Crown to raid Spanish, Dutch, and French vessels in the Caribbean. A portion of the loot was reserved for the Crown, but the rest found its way into the coffers of the town's affluent and often unscrupulous citizens. Although the 1670 Treaty of Madrid officially put an end to such sanctioned piracy, privateering and outright piracy continued into the 18th century. By 1689, nearly half the population was involved in this lucrative trade. In the late 1600s, Port Royal was at its peak, a vibrant, bustling city where expensive goods flowed through the port day after day. Captain John Taylor, in a 1688 account, described the town as an awe-inspiring city, well-built, strongly defended, and inhabited by brave people. He noted that there were around 600 brick houses, along with an equal number of wooden structures. Most of the buildings were 4 stories high, with basements, tiled roofs, sliding windows, and spacious stores and storerooms. Francis Hanson, writing in 1682, provided further insight into the wealth of Port Royal's citizens. Port Royal can be said to be the warehouse or treasure chest of the West Indies, always like a continuous fair or expo, importing all manner of fine goods daily, not just for the island, but in vast quantities, which would then be re-exported to the Spaniards, Indians, and other nations in exchange for gold bars, gold nuggets, silver wedges, pigs, pistols, pieces of 8, and several other coins of 2 types, as well as forged plates, jewelry, rich pearl necklaces, and unclassified or undrilled pearls by the bushel. Hanson continued, almost every house had a cupboard filled with plates, carelessly exposed, for they rarely closed their doors at night, not fearing thieves as they had no need for receivers. Despite the abundance of sugar plantations in other colonies, Jamaica's situation was unique. Port Royal had more liquid cash circulating in proportion to its population than even London. The wealth of its citizens was undeniable, and as Hanson observed, this wasn't just a colony, it was a vital cog in an international economic network, a meeting point for wealth and trade, and a symbol of the opulence and excess that defined the age. But as with all things born from greed and ambition, the glory of Port Royal was not destined to last. Its splendor was cut short on June 7, 1692, when a powerful earthquake swallowed the city, dragging it under the sea and leaving behind only ruins, frozen in time, a testament to the brief but brilliant rise of a city built on ambition, piracy and trade. On June the 7th, 1692, at precisely 12:20 p.m., Port Royal, Jamaica, met its catastrophic fate. In the span of just minutes, the earth shook violently, and a deadly tsunami followed, engulfing the thriving city in its wrath. The once bustling streets, lined with warehouses, traders and pirates, were the first to sink beneath the waves. The towering church spires, symbols of a city at the height of its power, crumbled and fell. The majestic fortresses, which had stood watch over the town for decades, disappeared into the surging sea. The land trembled, cracked and swallowed everything in its path. Among the few to survive was the town's rector, Reverend Dr. Heath, who later recalled those harrowing moments. "We heard the crash of the churches and towers falling, and we ran to save ourselves. I made my way toward Morgan's Fort, thinking it would be the safest place, an open area far from collapsing buildings. But as I approached, I saw the earth crack open, swallowing many, and the sea surged toward us from the fortifications. The destruction was total. Of the original 51 acres that had once been Port Royal, 20 acres sank 10 feet, and another 13 acres fell 35 feet into the ocean. The death toll was immediate, with 2,000 people lost in the first moments, and another 3,000 perished from injuries and disease in the days that followed. The survivors, those who managed to flee, sought refuge on the mainland, but not all left. Some remained, including key officials such as the Secretary and the port authorities, who were soon called back to their duties. Trade, too, resumed quickly, and the plundered treasures of the Spanish Empire soon flowed again into the city's vaults. The spirit of commerce and piracy, which had once made Port Royal infamous, revived in a shattered, rebuilt form. Yet disaster was not finished with the doomed city. On January 9th, 1703, a fire broke out in one of the remaining warehouses. The narrow streets, crowded with tightly packed buildings, made it impossible to control the blaze. By midnight, Port Royal had been reduced to ashes. The only structure that survived the inferno was the fortress. One shipowner's log captured the devastation in a simple, stark phrase: "Port Royal was burned, except for the castle." In the wake of the fire, a controversial proposal emerged to shift all commercial activity to the rising town of Kingston, which was deemed healthier and safer. Merchants favored the relocation, but sailors and seamen opposed the idea, claiming Kingston's harbor was too difficult to navigate. After heated debates, the proposal was scrapped, and both cities continued to coexist. However, Port Royal would never return to its former glory as a bustling commercial hub. In the following decades, between 1712 and 1744, a series of natural disasters and man-made failures further ravaged the town. With each disaster, Port Royal's place as the Caribbean's economic powerhouse slipped further away. By the end of the century, the city had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. It had shed its commercial significance and had become primarily a naval base for the British, its bustling marketplaces and rowdy streets now silenced by the unforgiving passage of time. Port Royal had been a city of wealth, of pirates and merchants, of fortunes won and lost, but in the end it became a reminder of the fragile nature of human ambition, laid low by the might of nature and the unforgiving tides of history. Port Royal's transformation from a bustling pirate city to a key British naval base began in 1713 and would endure for nearly 2 centuries, lasting until 1905. The British recognized the strategic importance of Port Royal's location in the Caribbean, and from 1715 to 1763, the area underwent significant development, starting with the establishment of shipyards. These facilities expanded over the years to accommodate the growing demands of the British Navy, ensuring that Port Royal could support large naval vessels. By 1770, the docks were fully equipped to handle ships capable of undertaking long transatlantic voyages, cementing Port Royal's status as a vital naval base. From 1763 to 1815, the shipyards were carefully managed, seeing continued growth and modernization. A new slipway was constructed south of the original docks, further enhancing Port Royal's ability to service the expanding fleet. During this period, the base became integral to the British Navy's operations across the Atlantic, providing a key staging ground for naval missions throughout the Caribbean and beyond. However, by 1905, the strategic importance of Port Royal began to wane, and the British Navy formally ceased operations there, marking the end of an era for the once proud base. Despite this, the remnants of Port Royal's naval legacy would linger for years to come, a testament to its role in the maritime history of the British Empire.